Hello everyone, my name is Mathew, and today I am presenting a virtual health assistant that uses and incorporates wearable device data along with AI agents to provide continuous and real-time support. The system utilizes a multi-agent architecture to monitor specific metrics like heart rate variability, steps taken, as well as energy expenditure in order to forecast short-term risk, detect anomalies, as well as manage medications, and also provide simple nudges, all in real time. So COVID-19 was a pretty big deal in our lives, and a lot of people contracted it, leading to hospitals becoming very congested. So as a result, hospitals introduced remote patient monitoring, which allowed them to remotely monitor patients in their homes and monitor vitals such as heart rate, blood sugar, glucose levels. Furthermore, there came about the increase of wearable devices like Apple Watch, Fitbit, Aura rings, which all produce a minute-by-minute stream. So the big issue is patients require proactive and continuous care, right? And a healthy lifestyle is achieved by, adhering to medications, making healthy lifestyle choices, etc. But the main issue is they don't really have the support for that. Traditional healthcare is very reactive. The solutions are only presented when the problems arise. So the patient will go to a doctor or a physician when they have a problem, and the doctor provides a solution or medication. But a lot of times we see patients still failing to adhere to healthy lifestyle choices or follow a set medication schedule. So the proposal is a multi-agentic AI system. So the idea here is to provide continuous care by taking the wearable device data that provides a continuous stream of minute-by-minute data and convert that into a proactive guidance. So the problem statement is traditional healthcare is reactive, leaving patients without continuous support to maintain healthy habits. And as a result, early warning signs often go unnoticed. Lifestyle routines break down and medication adherence declines. This increases the risk of avoidable hospitalizations, higher long-term healthcare costs, and the progression of chronic diseases. So the data set utilized was the Apple Health data. So this is data that's captured by Apple, either your iPhone or any wearable devices like Apple Watch that you have. And what I did was I exported mine and I parsed it into sort of a minute level table that contained 116,000 rows. And it spans for multiple years / months. And each row kind of includes a timestamp, steps, heart rate variability, active energy, as well as additional fields. What I did was I normalized the timestamps, cleaned the data, as well as I wanted to present the user the ability to input medical data about themselves, as well as provide medications and the set schedule for those medications. An agentic pipeline is run by line graph agents, which provides the ability to monitor this data in real time, forecast short-term risk, detect abnormal metrics like, too high of a heart rate or, steps being too low or inactivity for an extended period of time, manage medication windows, as well as generate small nudges when, these anomalies are detected or, if there's an extended period of time of inactivity. I also utilized rolling statistics. So for heart rate, steps, heart rate variability, and active energy, I created 1 hour rolling means, rolling standard deviations, rolling medians, as well as I calculated 5-minute deltas in order to capture the change of these metrics over time for short-term purposes. And the model that I used was the ARIMA model. It's a time forecasting model which allows you to take past data that obviously is time-stamped and predict based on trends, for the next certain period of time what those metrics will look like. So for example, if I provided some type of heart rate data for timestamps, it should be able to predict for maybe over the next 30 minutes in the future what might happen. What I also did was I created an ensemble of classification machine learning models, which used models like logistic regression, random forest, k-nearest neighbors, gradient boosting, and it took a sort of soft vote. And I also used isolation forest for anomaly detection. What that does is it tries to identify what your normal might be, what your normal stats are, and if there are metrics that go over a specific threshold. So the architecture is I have a whole bunch of agents that are specified or do specific tasks. So first we have the monitoring agent. So the monitoring agent looks for sort of deviations, right? So there's thresholds that are calculated based on a sort of window, right? So it could be like a 60-minute window, and the threshold for a high heart rate, you take sort of the 85th to 90th percentile of what that high heart rate might be, and for the newer incoming data, if that heart rate is higher than the sort of 85th to 90th percentile of the heart rate calculated, there's going to be a sort of nudge thrown saying, hey, you should relax, take a couple of quick deep breaths, right? The next agent is the forecasting agent. So pretty much this agent takes the ARIMA model we just discussed, and it takes the previous sort of 240 minutes of heart rate data, right? Where there should be at least 40 valid samples, right? Such that it can make a valid prediction, right? And it forecasts 30 minutes ahead, right? And it takes the sort of median predicted heart rate as a sort of summary for what that prediction might be. So the median is sort of scaled to a score between 0 and 1, where a heart rate of 90 beats per minute might have a sort of score near 0, versus a heart rate with about 130 beats per minute will have a score of 1, right? And this is sort of like a risk score, because we're predicting for the future. And this agent will send it to the conductor agent. The conductor agent is something we'll discuss at the very end. It's sort of like the orchestrator, and it alerts the conductor agent saying, hey, there's a risk here. You should probably alert the user. So next is the classifier agent. So this is the agent that takes the ensemble classification models, and it uses a logistic regression, random forest, k-nearest neighbors, gradient boosting. And then next is the anomaly agent. So the anomaly agent uses isolation forest. And then next is the medication agent. The medication agent tracks schedules for medication that the user inputs, if it ensures that the user takes their medications, right? And then next is the lifestyle agent. And the main agent is the conductor agent. So the conductor agent takes all this info from all of the other agents. So here we see the architecture diagram, right? So the architecture diagram, so we see we have the wearables to our very left, and then that XML data is taken and parsed into a CSV file using this Python HealthKit parser script. And then rolling statistics, you see in the very middle all the different types of agents, and they all feed their their outputs to the conductor agent, which sort of fuses their risk scores together and outputs a final alert with reasons, details, and tips to the user in order to take action. And the alerts are sort of exposed via fast API endpoints, And at the final end, we have sort of the React app, which is the user-facing interface, where users can go and sort of view and have more of a personalized understanding of what's going on. And moving on to the results. So I tested the data with only about 2,000 rows of data because I wanted to use a sort of a GPU, but I was unable to get that set up. And running this locally on my PC did take a lot of time, especially to process each individual row of 116,000 rows. So the monitoring agent did detect heart rate spikes and prolonged activity at the right times, right? And there were personalized nudges that were outputted to the user when such events were detected. The risk scores were properly sent to the conductor agent, who were able to reasonably output them and alert the user, with reasons, details, right, and tips in order to take proactive action that was visualized in the UI. And I think the main important thing is this was a functional dashboard, right? Even though it's very basic, if I had more time, I believe I could turn this into a sort of amazing looking app, right? But the main thing is that it's functional. So looking at the sort of discussing it and looking at the limitations, right? This is something that requires continuous support, right? I can't just run this locally on my PC and just leave it running, right? As I would have to make sure my computer's on at all times of the day. This is something that requires its own sort of GPU or instance, to stand it up and to keep it continuously running. So the current output is kind of JSONified, as in the output is sort of like in a JSON format, and we do need to humanize it when it's shown on the React dashboard, right? It needs to be understood by the humans. But even when looking at the JSON output, you can tell what the alert is, what the reason for the alert is, what the tips are, etc. And I think the final thing is that this can empower patients, right? Patients are able to proactively utilize this info to take better care of themselves, right? Use these nudges to their benefit, right? When you get nudges over and over again, especially when something is monitoring you, you might as well just say, I'm gonna do it, right? Otherwise, this thing's gonna keep constantly pushing me to do it, right? And the only way to get it to stop is to actually do what it's saying or telling me to do. But there are some limitations, right? This is currently a single source data set, utilizing only Apple Health Kit data, right? But there's multitudes of other data sources from wearable devices like, the Oura rings, the Fitbits, that could potentially provide more insight, right? And maybe help reduce some of the noise that could be present in the Apple Watch or the Apple Health Kit database. And furthermore, this isn't clinical, right? There have been no clinical trials done. This isn't something that's physician approved, right? We would have to get all of that done, and there would need to be HIPAA compliance, right? Like, obviously the user personal data can't be sort of shown for the entire world to see. Like, the model can't just train on everyone's personal data, right? Because if there's potential data leakages, that's a very, very big problem. And obviously clinical trials are required to, prove that this is far more beneficial than traditional healthcare, right? Like, I could say on my end, this is amazing and better than traditional healthcare, but unless there's clinical trials conducted, there is no hard set proof, right? There's no physician backing, none of that. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I really appreciate it. In conclusion, this presentation sort of shows a agentic real-time healthcare system that takes and incorporates wearable device data that's minute by minute and streams it and turns it into sort of a proactive guidance system for a patient to utilize in order to maintain a healthy lifestyle, right? It's very basic, it's pretty explainable, and I believe it's ready to be evolved into something much greater that can be integrated in a much more larger scale. Thank you so much for listening.